Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? Travis and Susie here from the Wolf Hunters. We've got a reaction video for you. We've got this link. You can find that link in the description box below. You click it, you pick it. You can request music, movie scenes, comedy skits, live performances, documentary segments, sports, and more for the Wolf Hunterz Reactions channel. Today's video is brought to you by Emmanuel, bringing us Ayrton
Senna, The Last Corner. 3D anatomy of the crash and how F1 changed.
All right. Now, if you guys have not seen our other video of Ayrton Senna, it was a Top Gear, a tribute to Ayrton Senna, one of the greatest F1 drivers of all time. If you guys haven't seen that one, make sure you check that video out next. And I will put a playlist on the screen at the end of the video of all of our
yeah, we've been really loving
videos.
Getting to know about racing and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
we're just scratching the surface. We don't really know much, but you guys have been sending in some videos, and we've been really
learning about F1, learning about NASCAR, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so thank you guys for that, by the way. Go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and feel free to comment below.
May 1st, 1994, Imola, San Marino, the third race of the season. The sun shone over Autodromo Enzo Edino Ferrari, but the atmosphere was tense. The weekend had already seen severe crashes and a fatal accident. Concern overshadowed the excitement of race day. Ayrton Senna's Williams FW16 sped down the start-finish straight at over 300 kilometers per hour. It was a familiar sight, but he had no way of knowing it would be the last. Ahead lay Tamburello, one of the fastest corners in Formula One, a high-speed left bend he had taken countless times before. But this time something went terribly wrong, and in that moment, the world of motorsport changed forever. The impact was...
Oh my gosh, that hit so hard. Let me see
Got
this.
goosebumps all over.
Oh,
I can't imagine what that was like forever.
But this time something went terribly wrong, and in that moment, the world of motorsport changed forever.
So what happened to the corner that he it appears as though he was still going straight, like?
It says this is the anatomy of the crash.
Okay. Sure. I guess I'll wait.
The impact was brutal. Senna's Williams slammed into the concrete barrier at nearly 220 kilometers per hour. Debris scattered across the track as silence fell over the crowd. For a brief moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Marshals rushed to the scene, waving frantically for medical assistance. Inside the wreckage, Ayrton Senna lay motionless. His head had tilted slightly to the right, his body still strapped into the cockpit. His heart was still beating, but something was terribly wrong. The medical team arrived within seconds. Professor Sid Watkins, Formula One's chief doctor and a close friend of Senna, knelt beside him. A slight movement, a faint breath, offered a flicker of hope. But as they carefully lifted him from the car, the reality became clear. The injury was severe. The helicopter lifted off, carrying Senna towards the Maggiore Hospital in Bologna. But deep down, many feared the inevitable. The paddock stood in stunned silence, drivers and teams frozen in disbelief. Formula One had seen many crashes before, but this was different. This was Ayrton Senna. By the time the official announcement came, the world already knew. At 6:40 p.m., Ayrton Senna was declared dead.
Terminato 5 minuti fa, purtroppo confermano quella che era stata la diagnosi clinica di morte cerebrale.
Ma non resta più alcuna speranza?
No, purtroppo nessuna speranza.
Ayrton Senna, 3 times world motor racing champion, has died after crashing during the San Marino Grand Prix.
World motor racing champion Ayrton Senna has been pronounced clinically dead.
Brazil was in mourning. Ayrton Senna was more than a driver. He was a national hero, a symbol of hope in difficult times. Now he was gone. The country came to a standstill. 3 days of national mourning were declared. Streets filled with banners, murals and flowers. People wept openly, holding Brazilian flags or wearing his iconic yellow helmet in tribute. On the day of his funeral, over 3 million people lined the streets of São Paulo, the largest public gathering in Brazil's history. His coffin, draped in the Brazilian flag, was carried through the city in a hero's farewell. Legends of the sport walked alongside him. Alain Prost, once his greatest rival, now carried his fallen friend's coffin, his eyes filled with sorrow. Emerson Fittipaldi, Rubens Barrichello and Gerhard Berger stood in silent grief. The weight of the moment was overwhelming. A nation that had cheered for him, lived through his victories, now grieved together. Senna had always dreamed of making Brazil proud. In life, he gave them glory. In death, he left behind a legacy that would never fade. But how did it happen? The crash was violent, yet the car remained largely intact. What exactly had taken Ayrton Senna's life? Let's turn back to that moment.
That's such an...
Ayrton Senna entered Tamburello at nearly 300 kilometers per hour, but lost control. The car hit the concrete barrier at over 200 kilometers per hour. The front right wheel struck first, sending a shockwave through the chassis. The suspension arm, still attached, snapped back with immense force, becoming a deadly projectile in milliseconds. As the car rebounded slightly, the broken suspension arm, now a jagged metal spear, struck Senna's helmet just above his right eye. The impact caused severe trauma to his skull and brain. If it had struck just a few centimeters higher or lower, he might have survived.
Oh, man. I mean, at the first glance when that hit, I mean, you don't see that, you don't notice that. Like, I would never have thought that it was a piece of the
projectile.
Ayrton Senna was a man of many layers. He was the master of rain, fearless and precise in the harshest conditions. He was a brave heart, willing to risk his own safety for others. He was a fiery soul driven by passion, sometimes spilling over. Senna was also a gentleman, capable of grace in the heat of battle. He was a national hero, someone millions looked up to and believed in. But above all, he was human, one who felt deeply, who cried, who loved, who cared.
Wow.
And beyond all of that, he was one of the greatest drivers the sport has ever known.
Man, whoever put this video together just really did an amazing job with... Wow.
On the racetrack, he wasn't merely competing, he was composing something. Each lap was a performance, each turn a brushstroke on the canvas of speed. He had an extraordinary feel for the car, an ability to push right to the edge without crossing it. In the rain, he was poetry, and in the dry, perfection. His focus was unmatched. His reflexes unexplainable. He wasn't just racing against others, he was chasing something deeper, something within. Senna wasn't just one of the best. He was perhaps the best there ever was. But even the greatest meet their limits. So what exactly happened in that race?
What happened?
And when Brazilian driver Ayrton Senna.
Brad Lickers, arguably the best riders sponsors expect.
1994, a new season, a new beginning. But for Ayrton Senna, it wasn't just another year, it was unfinished business. He had lost the championship in 1993. Now he was driving for Williams, the reigning champions. The expectations were monumental. The pressure, relentless. Senna wasn't just expected to win, he was expected to dominate. But something felt off. The Williams FW16 was fast, but difficult, twitchy, unstable, unpredictable. That year, Formula One had banned
Wait, the car was?
I think
The
so.
vehicle? Oh, let me take that back. Yeah.
The Williams FW16 was fast, but difficult, twitchy, unstable, unpredictable. That year, Formula One had banned electronic aids, traction control, active suspension, launch systems. The computers were gone. And for the first time in years, the cars had to be tamed by hands alone.
Now, why would they ban that? Let me know.
Hmm.
Again, we're new to this.
Yeah.
It seems like you would want those things, right? I don't know.
Even Senna, arguably the most gifted driver on the grid, struggled to connect with the machine.
A year ago, the difference was with the electronic suspension. The cars were riding the bumps a bit better. Now, with the normal suspension, it is very difficult for setting up the cars and getting the cars to ride smooth over the bump.
At the same time, a new star was rising, Michael Schumacher. Young, ruthless, incredibly fast. His Benetton B194 looked planted, confident, unshaken by the changes. The season opened in Brazil, Senna's home race. Senna started from pole. Senna kept the young German behind until the first pit stops, but then Schumacher's Benetton came alive in the pits. With a lightning-fast stop, he rejoined the track nearly 1.5 seconds ahead. Schumacher stretched the gap nearly 10 seconds, but Senna fought back and closed it down to 5. Then, with just 16 laps to go, tragedy. Out of turn 14, a spin.
Oh, wow.
The engine stalled. The race was over. Next came Japan at Ida Circuit. Senna again started from pole, but a collision at the first corner ended his race immediately. 0 points after 2 races. Meanwhile, Schumacher had 2 wins and full momentum. Senna, frustrated and unsettled, confessed privately, "I can't drive this car the way I want, it's not ready." Next stop, Imola, where everything would change. The European leg of the 1994 season was set to begin at Imola. Senna arrived with 2 pole positions but 0 points. The pressure was mounting and so were the expectations. During Friday practice, Brazilian driver Rubens Barrichello suffered a violent crash. His car launched over a curb, smashed into the barriers and flipped. It was horrifying to watch. Senna, both a mentor and a close friend, rushed to the medical center. When he saw Rubens conscious, bruised but alive, he exhaled. But the fear lingered. It had come too close.
He's alright. Alright, he's shocked, of course, but he's alright.
Then came Saturday. In the midst of qualifying, the weekend took a devastating turn. Roland Ratzenberger, a bright and optimistic Austrian driver, lost his front wing at high speed. With no control, his car ploughed into the wall. The impact was brutal, the outcome fatal. Senna was devastated. He spent the evening in silence with close friends and the Brazilian press. The atmosphere was heavy, no laughter, no conversation. Senna believed the race should have been cancelled. He didn't want to drive, but he would, because it was who he was.
Yeah, and I don't know how stuff works in this field. I don't know, like, contracts and, you know, all those things and what you're required to do. And
Or if he was just like, I said I would, and so I will.
yeah.
But I don't know.
You can see things were just
Not working.
off. Yeah.
That's what it said. Yeah. That's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
And so, race day arrived. Senna had secured pole position, his 3rd in 3 races, but this one felt different. There was no celebration, no joy, just silence and pressure. Senna got in the car, carrying an Austrian flag in his pocket, his silent promise to honor Ratzenberger if he stood on the podium. As the lights went out, disaster struck almost immediately. A crash at the back of the grid between JJ Leto and Pedro Lamy sent debris flying into the crowd. The safety car was deployed. For several laps, the field crawled behind it.
You know, we're like watching this, you know, or not this, but we like, you know, watch racing and we're entertained, but I don't know that it's always processing how dangerous it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's hard because it seems like a lot of people are noticing, hey, things keep going wrong here, but like no one is calling it. Like no one is like, all right, this just something is off. Or maybe they were, and I don't know. This is, in hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
You know, but
At the back of the grid between JJ Leto and Pedro Lamy sent debris flying into the crowd. The safety car was deployed. For several laps, the field crawled behind it, tyres cooling, brakes losing temperature. Senna, leading the race, tried to keep heat in the car, swerve by swerve, weaving left and right. But as the safety car pulled in, the race resumed, and just moments later, tragedy. All that pressure of 1994, all those technical changes, all those lost points, all those terrifying crashes, and the tragedy of Roland Ratzenberger. Could it all somehow have caused Ayrton Senna, one of the greatest drivers of all time, to make a mistake? We'll never truly know. But among the many theories about that day, driver error was always the least convincing. Almost nobody who knew Senna believed it.
Wow.
Not the team, not his rivals, not the fans. So attention turned elsewhere.
Wow. Imagine being so incredible at your craft that something like this happened and everyone's like, it wasn't human error. It was not. It was the car, it was the track, it was the this, it was the that, because he is so good at this that you have more trust in him as a driver than you do in the creators of everything else. Wow.
Some pointed out that Senna's car didn't even twitch as it left the track. It went straight, without a hint of correction or oversteer. This led to the belief that something in the FW16 had failed, mechanically or aerodynamically. Theories began to emerge that perhaps a part had broken, or the car had suddenly lost downforce. From there, investigators began to explore the possibility of mechanical failure. In the aftermath of the crash, Italian authorities launched a formal investigation. The case went to court, and a lengthy legal process began. One of the most scrutinized possibilities was the steering column. Senna had requested a modification before the race. He wasn't entirely comfortable with the cockpit layout of the FW16. The steering wheel sat too far forward for his liking, forcing him to stretch his arms more than usual. He wanted the wheel brought closer to match previous cars. To achieve this, engineers cut the shaft and welded in a hand-fabricated extension. A technical report concluded that the column had been badly welded and may have cracked and possibly broken entirely just before Senna entered Tamburello. Photographs taken after the crash showed the steering wheel detached from the car. Examinations revealed a jagged, uneven tear where the column had broken. But there was no definitive proof whether it had snapped before the impact or because of it. One of the most debated clues came from onboard footage. In slow motion, Senna's steering wheel appears to shift slightly forward and backward. Some believed this indicated a structural failure. Williams engineers, however, claimed it was normal flex in the design, something still visible in the museum model of the FW16. Skeptics argued that this movement might have been altered after the crash. Although the broken steering column theory remains one of the strongest explanations, there has never been a full consensus. In the end, the court could not reach a definitive conclusion. The theory was considered plausible, but it was never proven. And so, attention turned to other possibilities. Another theory combined two mechanical possibilities: suspension failure or a tire puncture. Early in the race, debris from the crash between JJ Leto and Pedro Lamy scattered across the track. If Senna's car struck a fragment, it might have caused hidden suspension damage or a slow puncture. This theory gained support after a photograph by Paul-Henri Caillet, published in Autosport in February 1997, appeared to show Senna's car heading toward debris just before the crash. Some believed it damaged the right front tire. Others, like former F1 driver Michele Alboreto, suggested a suspension failure beyond the steering column may have caused the sudden loss of control. Alboreto himself had experienced a high-speed off-track moment at Tamburello years earlier, under eerily similar circumstances. His car had gone straight at nearly full speed, but unlike Senna, he escaped injury. He later remarked how fortunate he had been and how unforgiving that corner could be when something went wrong. Tragically, Alboreto would lose his life in a separate racing accident in 2001.
Oh my gosh.
But no conclusive evidence was ever found. No confirmed puncture, no fractured suspension arms, just another plausible but unproven theory. The final major theory didn't involve something breaking, but rather how the car interacted with the track. To understand it, we need to look at how Formula One cars generate grip. These machines don't rely solely on their tires, they depend heavily on aerodynamics. At high speeds, air flowing over the wings and under the floor creates downforce, a vertical force pressing the car to the ground, increasing grip and stability. In the early 1990s, F1 cars produced a significant portion of their downforce through ground effect. By shaping the underside of the car and keeping it close to the track surface, a low-pressure area is created, essentially sucking the car downward. The closer to the ground, the stronger the effect. But even the smallest disruption can collapse it. If the car bottoms out, even for a split second, this low-pressure zone is lost. A sudden drop in downforce. In a corner like Tamburello, taken at nearly 300 kilometers per hour, that can mean the difference between control and catastrophe. So what could have caused the car to strike the ground? Some pointed to the 1994 regulation changes, which removed electronic aids and made the cars harder to control, especially under heavy load. Others noted that Tamburello's surface wasn't smooth. It had subtle undulations and bumps, enough to disturb a car running close to the ground. But the most significant factor may have been the cooling of the tires. After the early crash between Leto and Lamy, the safety car was deployed. Back then, safety cars were new to F1 and painfully slow. Tire temperatures dropped rapidly, so did pressure. As pressure dropped, the car's ride height lowered, bringing the floor dangerously close to the track. Onboard footage shows Senna gesturing with frustration, urging the safety car to go faster. He knew what cold tires meant. He knew the danger. And then, just moments later, his car left the racing line and never came back. The crash was sudden, the impact violent, the loss unimaginable. But the consequences, they would reshape the future of Formula One. Let's now look at what changed.
Hey, you know what? That's good that they're looking at it and saying, you know what? We'll become better.
Yeah.
Because of this. We will try our hardest for this not to happen again, you know. If it's, since everybody is so confident in his skill as a driver, we now have to fix things so that we learn for the future.
Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna's deaths in the same race weekend shook Formula One to its core. It wasn't just a tragedy, it was a turning point. The sport could no longer afford to look away. Just 2 weeks later, during the Monaco Grand Prix, the FIA announced a series of urgent safety changes. They were swift, serious, and non-negotiable. For the Spanish Grand Prix, just one race later, a wooden skid block, also known as a plank, was introduced beneath every car to limit ground effect and enforce minimum ride height. Front and rear wings were reduced in size to cut overall downforce. Diffuser dimensions were restricted to reduce aerodynamic suction under the car. Then, ahead of the Canadian Grand Prix, just 4 weeks after Monaco, teams were required to reinforce chassis structures to improve cockpit integrity during impacts. Suspension components had to be strengthened to prevent parts from breaking away violently. The engine airbox was reduced in size, lowering engine power and peak speed. These weren't proposals, they were emergency regulations. And they were just the beginning.
So did they make any changes to the safety car? Because he said that they were going too slow and the tires were cooling down, right? So I wonder if they made any changes to that or not.
Yeah.
Tracks were reprofiled with larger runoff areas, better medical access, and safer barrier technology. And at Imola, the changes were immediate. Tamburello Corner, once a high-speed sweep with a concrete wall just meters from the edge, was redesigned into a chicane. The wall was pushed back, gravel traps were added. That corner, once feared, was made survivable. Safety became not just a goal, but a foundation. And because of that, countless lives were saved.
I bet.
I feel like, why aren't we ahead of the game with these things? Like
Sometimes you don't know till you know.
So now we ask the question, what if Ayrton Senna had that crash, not in 1994, but in today's Formula One car? Would the outcome have been the same? Probably not. Because today's Formula One is not the same sport it was 3 decades ago. It looks similar, it sounds familiar, but under the surface, it's a fortress. Modern F1 cars are built around one mission: survival.
Wow.
Wheel tethers are now mandatory, designed to keep the tyres and suspension arms from flying off during a crash. In 1994, the front right assembly struck Senna fatally. Today, that piece might never have left the car. And then there's the halo, a titanium structure mounted above the cockpit. Introduced in 2018, it protects the driver's head from flying debris and direct impact. Once controversial, the halo is now universally accepted after saving lives in crashes that might have otherwise been fatal. The HANS device, head and neck support, is required for every driver. It limits violent head movement in sudden decelerations, protecting the spine and base of the skull.
How did that one thing not interfere with sight? Or is it like it does, but it's the value is there?
I don't know, because it like has a metal bar in the middle. I'm unsure.
Cockpit sides have been raised, wrapped in energy-absorbing foam. What was once exposed is now shielded from intrusion and debris. Helmet standards have advanced dramatically. Stronger visors, reinforced shells and fireproof linings, tested in ways unthinkable in 1994. Survival cells, the central cockpit, are now carbon fiber capsules, virtually indestructible in high-speed crashes. In most modern incidents, the chassis survives intact, even when the rest of the car is destroyed.
Wow.
Well, I'm glad they've made these changes.
Yeah.
That's great.
If Senna's crash had occurred in today's car, he might have stepped out, bruised, in shock, but alive. That's the cruel irony of legacy. He didn't get to live in the safer world he helped build, but everyone else did. Senna's car couldn't save him, but Senna helped save the cars that came next, and through them, he saved lives.
I was just gonna say that too. Like, his loss, you know, saved so many people, I'm sure.
You know, that's just, I think that's something that, you know, you gotta do when tragedy like this strikes. You have to learn from it, you know, in order to process the grief sometimes, I think. Wow.
Now we leave the final word to Ayrton.
So anytime you go driving, testing or racing, you are exposed to some risks. There are calculated risks and there are unexpected situations that can happen. And you can be gone just in a fraction of a second. So you realize that you're nobody. Suddenly you're nobody, and your life can have an end sudden. This is part of your life, and you either face it in a professional, in a cool manner, or you just drop it, just leave it and don't do it anymore, really. And I happen to like too much what I do to just drop it. I can't drop it. It's part of my life.
Wow.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us share more stories like this one.
Wow. Woo! That was intense.
That was a slew of emotions. Oh my goodness.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. We learned a lot today, and I'm sure you guys will share more in the comments section. If you want to watch more of our reaction videos that involve racing, we'll put that up here on the screen in just a second. You can click on it and watch all of them. You can binge on them if you want. They're binge worthy. Thanks for being patient with us as well, as we're still learning about Formula One and racing and all that stuff. Like, subscribe, comment. If you want to request your own personal reaction video, look for this link in the description box below. Stay tuned. Stay positive.
We love you guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
I just wanna pay my bills.